Welcome to SEC Sports Roundtable. Got a missing spot over there, and we'll worry about that a little bit later. But a little traffic in the Nashville area has caused a missing in action for us, and we're well aware of that. So we are going to go with 3 tonight. But get straight into everything and say welcome to Drew. How are you?
Shane, I'm trying to put on a happy face.
And you're wearing that orange just to stay happy, remind you of the good times it used to be at Tennessee land?
Rajon Neal, only touchdown for Tennessee this week against Arkansas, so I'm going to celebrate that. I'm going to focus on the positive. Rajon, congratulations on your end-around touchdown, and go Big Orange.
You're just celebrating the small victories, is that what it is?
Yeah, when you're 49-7, you got to look for the positives in life.
Well, we'll hit on that game a little bit later. It's not a good game for Tennessee, but it had some significance for the team that they were playing. So, Blair, glad to see you're back from a trip to Starkville.
I'm back.
I guess you would like to come back with better news than you had.
Yeah, but we're also playing Alabama, so it's kind of par for the course.
Had your chances.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that as well. But we're going to get straight into things and say welcome to the SEC Sports Roundtable. I'm your host, Shane Bailey. I want to thank you guys for listening in. I know we touched on that a little bit, but we do truly thank you guys for taking the time to listen to us, and we enjoy doing this. So we're glad that you're enjoying it. We're starting to see some comments out there. People are liking us. We've got some shout-outs there from Canada, I noticed. So we're huge up north.
North of the border. We're the #1 SEC podcast from Nashville, Tennessee out here.
But we're getting all over the North America. So want to thank you guys so much for listening in and liking us and giving us your comments there. So we're going to keep up the work here on our end. You guys keep listening and tell all your friends as well. You can find us, and that will lead right into how you can find us, and that's on iTunes as well as Stitcher Radio. Either one of those, if you just do a search for SEC Sports or SEC Sports Roundtable, you're going to find us pretty much up towards the top of that. You can also go to the website, which is SECSRT.com. We also try to give you some weekly updates throughout the week, and we do that on the Facebook, and that address is SEC Sports Roundtable.
On the Facebook?
On the...
You put the back in it?
Yes.
They spent years trying to get rid of that the.
And it's the Twitter?
Yeah. We're on the Twitter.
So we're on Facebook at SEC Sports Roundtable, and we're also on Twitter at SECSRT. That's a number of ways to find us. If there's a new way out there, we'll try to find that as well. YouTube. We forgot YouTube. And that's how you could see Drew showing off his fancy orange jersey just a few minutes ago as well as right now. So also go check us out on YouTube if you'd like to watch the video version of this, and that's going to be at SECSRT. That's our channel there. But we're going to get kick things right off and go straight into some news. Not a whole lot of news out there this week. I know last week when we recorded this podcast, the information that was coming out of Penn State was just brand new. So we held back on some of our thoughts and things. But, it's been a week, and a lot has transpired up at Penn State. So, Drew, you want to kick us off with that real quick?
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. Everybody knows the going-ons in Happy Valley, not so happy. Joe Paterno gone. That came out on Wednesday
evening. Yeah.
Wednesday evening, maybe Thursday, somewhere around then. They announced that he was gone. Just kind of some crazy scenes, a lot, not really rioting, but had a lot of the students out there, and it was almost a surreal scene because I know that's a hard decision to make for Penn State, and I don't envy their position at all. I think they did the right thing. I think that Penn State, the university, has handled this as well as they could. They haven't rushed to judgment on anything. It seems like they've done their due diligence. And, I'm rooting. I root for Penn State. I wanted them to do good against Nebraska. Like to see a little healing, going on for those players because the players didn't have anything to do with it. A neat scene. I don't know if either one of y'all saw the pregame Penn State Nebraska. Everybody came out together. I mean, I think there's 100,000 in attendance to that game, and it was just. You could hear a pin drop.
Yeah. They
got together and said a prayer for the victims, and I actually believe it was Nebraska's assistant coach that led that.
It was like a sermon almost.
Yeah.
So it lasted a while.
And then they played a crappy Big Ten football game, low scoring, and Nebraska got the win. I'm ready to put it behind us. I mean, I watch sports to kind of get away, and I enjoy it, and I like pretty much everything about it. And the kind of stuff that we've been talking about with Penn State is a little heavy for me, and I'm ready for justice to be served and let Penn State get on track, get a new coach, and build that program. They've got it's one of the best suited programs to be one of the best in the country. So
I noticed that, and there's some irony there, but ESPN left out. They did not call anywhere around Penn State Happy Valley, and then you always refer to it like that, but they left that off and started using the name of the city that Penn State's in. Was that State College, Pennsylvania, as well as the name of the stadium itself, and they wouldn't use a Happy
Beaver Stadium, all that.
So they just chose to not use it the way that everybody knows Penn State is Happy Valley. They just decided not to say that, and I understand why, I guess, but it's just the ESPN's way of trying to control the
Happy Valley.
Yeah, the conversation there.
Yeah, I think it was. I think I agree with Drew. They handled it as well as he could. I mean, when you've got that many people in leadership roles that just drop the ball from that standpoint, and it was pretty interesting to find out that with it being a public institution with a public board of trustees, there's a process that has to go for them to actually meet and do those types of things. So it's why it actually took a couple of days to transpire, because once you get that, that media attention that they got, you don't really have control over what you can do.
Yeah.
I thought that they'd done a good job. I think the students kind of rebounded off of Wednesday night. Pretty sure it's mixed emotions from that standpoint, but I definitely think it was the right decision to kind of move past and go forward from there.
Yeah.
And I watched here's the weird thing is I watched a lot of coverage on that, but I didn't just it wasn't like one of those things where I couldn't turn the TV off and try to find something else. But they were talking about, like, if you're a Nebraska fan, you might not want to wear your team colors, and you might not want to come to this game. There were like threats out there, and thank you, Penn State fans and students for not doing anything stupid, because that would have been ridiculous. Let's remember what happened here. There was a huge scandal, and a legendary coach was involved in it. To a lesser degree. I don't want to. I'm not saying the man's a monster. I think we know who the villain in this story is, but the guy didn't do his due diligence, Joe Paterno, and instead of riding out on a storybook ending on the shoulders of the players, he got fired with 2 games left in his 40-something season.
Yeah.
I think we all agree that the only reason he came back this year was to beat Grambling's head coach's all-time win record, and you saw him. If none of this happened, if 3 weeks from now this information were to come out, the grand jury indictment would have waited 3 more weeks, I think that you would have seen him retire, and the situation at Penn State could have been handled completely different. Now,
sure. The thing about it is that I find interesting is they all had to talk to the grand jury, and we can get off on this for, we could talk 30 minutes on this, but they actually talked to the grand jury in January, and it's just amazing to me that you knew something of this effect was coming,
right.
And even that Mark Maddox that actually wrote the article in April, basically detailing, because he found out about the grand jury indictment, and everybody kind of didn't do anything about it. I mean, he laid out what was going to happen in April, and everybody just kind of kicked it to the side. So it's kind of an interesting environment there. I mean, you got people. It's kind of an interesting world. I mean, it's kind of its own little place that we can actually see. And he was pretty much a deity. I mean, he was. Yeah. He was more than just a coach.
But to me, it was a little odd, the timing of it. It's like you said, everyone knew in April if you read those reports. But it happens till 3 weeks before the end of the season. I know justice needs to be served swiftly and quickly, but if the interviews were done in January, what's 3 weeks?
Yeah.
And
the other thing is how are they not prepared to know that this is going to be a big story? I mean, it's not like you're talking to the grand jury about something else. I mean, it's
to take a Miami. Yeah. There's a hurricane coming.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that, and then you get into all the details. We could go on forever about the DA missing and all that kind of stuff from the '98 investigation. And I mean, there's some stuff that's going on.
There's a 48 hours mystery.
We can just hold on because this train's going to take some more turns. That's for sure.
There's been talk on Twitter this is the biggest story in the history of sports. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, I think there was probably more coverage with like the OJ murders,
It is one of those things where I think
them,
it's a wow. I think it's a where were you when OJ, in the white Bronco, or where were you when Magic Johnson said he had AIDS,
that was HIV?
Well. I mean, I think it's up there. I think it's only going to get worse, unfortunately, because the wide receivers coach is now in protective custody supposedly, and so there's all kinds of stuff going on.
And I guess
there's some interesting things that haven't been found out, and I thought the governor of Pennsylvania in his press conference was very delicate because he's the one that started the investigation. But it's going to be interesting.
And I've kind of wondered. I kind of heard some rumblings that the reason he's the wide receiver McCreary, is that his name? Mm-hmm. That he hasn't been let go, or like whistleblower laws and things like that. I mean, you got to do your due diligence. Which I guess you could. I guess they didn't feel the same way with Paterno, but
well, I think this was something I thought was pretty cool. Some legal counsel at ESPN talked about the public board of trustees and the process when you have a board meeting. You have to declare topics. You have to declare a time. You actually have to go through this process to have a meeting. So the agenda for that evening was the president, Paterno. They obviously had to get that off, and so that's where they made the decisions. And then they're still kind of doing that process. But there's something else going on that's way bigger than what we've even seen, I think, unfortunately. And, I hate to see the story get even worse, but unfortunately I think it's going to.
Well, I think if you're alive at all this week, you've heard the details of all of it. We're not going to go into that again. We touched on it last week, and you can hear some of our thoughts about that if you're interested. Go back and check out last week's podcast as well. But let's get on to football and the SEC. We've got some BCS talk. I think we're going to spend a little time here in the beginning talking some BCS implications after last week's games that really were outside the SEC but had a huge impact on the teams that play here. The polls did come out already. We're recording this Sunday afternoon this week, and, the BCS rankings for this week are not out officially yet. We've got some projections we're going to be looking at. But first time in 3 years that LSU A team is unanimously ranked number one, and that's LSU in the poll. So that's one bit of news. That just shows how strong they are. The BCS, Drew, you ready to chime in? I can tell you're ready.
No, yeah, absolutely. I was just kind of waiting. You've got, what we expected. You've got LSU number one, a little bit of house cleaning with Boise State and Stanford kind of getting swept away, which wasn't expecting the Boise State. I fully expected the Oregon beating Stanford. If y'all remember my very first podcast, my pick to win the national championship was Oregon this year, and they looked at.
That was before the LSU loss, though, correct?
That was absolutely before the LSU loss. And I'll tell you what, if I have to take a dark horse, team that I think can sneak in there and be that team, I don't know that the guys want to see a Alabama LSU rematch again. And for the first time, the Pac-10, Pac-12 now might benefit from having that extra game, where Oregon would get a chance to be back in that national championship talk, which I would love to see. I think Oregon is one of those class teams that could play with most teams if they got another shot. But back to the SEC, you've got LSU just a clear number one. Alabama looks like they're going to hold strong. And we're using Jerry Palm's projections from CBS Sportsline. Give him his due. He's, you can figure this. You can figure the BCS out. It's just a lot of math, and hopefully he's got some computer programs that does it for him. I don't know if he's got his slide rule and abacus out there trying to figure it out. But Arkansas moved up 2 spots to number 6 is what it looks like, is what we're projecting. And beyond that, you've got South Carolina at 12 and Georgia at 14. But, the big news is
I just want to say that out in the middle of the afternoon Saturday, I was checking Twitter and doing a few updates, and all of a sudden there was just all this talk about that TCU Boise State game. And the other game I was watching was not that interesting at that point. And I flipped on. That was a great finish. And a horrible pass interference call, and I'm so glad justice was served there by the missed field goal. And I feel bad for the kicker. He should have never been in that position to have to miss that field goal, but that game should have been over 2 or 3 plays before that.
I mean, it's par for the course, man. It's Boise State, and you do this with Nevada last year when you can kind of put things away and squash the talk, and here you have, this is even more inexplicable to me. I mean, TCU is not even a really great football team, and the guy throws for 473 yards on you in Boise. And so it just it's got to be frustrating for Boise State because I mean you can't do those. To have those games.
Bear with me for a second. I'm going into an analogy, and this might not work at all. But here's my thought with Boise State: is you remember like when you were if anybody that's got a little brother or a little sister or something, which I don't, but I was probably this guy. You're out hanging out with your older brother's friends or. You're playing with your buddies, and everybody's getting their turn to do something, and then the little brother wants his turn. I want to turn, and you're just thinking, I'll be fair, I'll let them have a turn. That's kind of what I feel like with Boise State is they're the ones. I mean, we've got such a strong football season going. In the last few years, we've had the same thing where. You've got an LSU team that's unbelievable right now. Oklahoma State's done everything that they need to do to stay in the picture. Alabama, a wonderful team. You've got a one-loss Oregon team. You've got a Stanford team that's got one loss, and then you've got this Boise State team, the thorn in your side that you're thinking, I sure hope that Oklahoma State doesn't lose, and then now this is the year we're going to put Boise State in that championship, and I'm glad that Boise State, kind of got cleared out.
Yeah.
I just didn't want another situation where. I'm just so tired of that talk of, all right, should Boise State be playing? And it's clear to me that
should a undefeated Boise State make it to the championship game when you have a one loss?
It's just not fair. I mean, I look at a team. I mean, Alabama plays this schedule, but I look at like Tennessee, how hard their schedule is, and everybody in the SEC, and then you've got Boise State, who wonderful team. They beat a Georgia team in Atlanta. And they've they do what they can with their schedule, but they play cupcakes, and they finally have they're playing a top 20 team in TCU, and they get beat.
Yeah.
Last year was it Utah? They got beat by Utah.
Nevada.
Yeah. Nevada.
The quarterback
Kaepernick.
Yeah.
It's just. Shane, we've seen your blog on letting the little guy have a chance, and I agree with you, but I'm just tired of this talk. I mean, there's too many good teams to keep. To keep wondering should an undefeated Boise State team play? I don't think so. Schedule 4 just incredibly tough non-conference games, and then we'll talk.
Yeah, well, they did schedule a couple, and
yeah, it's easier said than done.
Sure, and then people don't want to play them too. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah. So, but that helped sort things out. It provided a little more clarity, but if anything, though, it muddied the water in a lot of situations.
I mean, who's here? I say all this, and Houston's going, "Hey, what about us? We hadn't lost yet."
Number 10 in the BCS, sitting there at 10-0 though. They will not be in the conversation,
No.
but they would get an automatic. Does Conference USA get an automatic berth?
No, they don't. If they're in the top 8 or something of the BCS standings, then you're going to go. So we kind of have to watch that, and hopefully they won't. I mean, that's so bad to say, but
I think they. I mean. I don't know. You can look up the rest of their schedule, but I think they have a pretty easy remaining 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, and
so there's a good shot they would be a 12-0 team.
Case Keenum,
would they play Southern Miss? Have they played them yet? Or
we're about to find out.
I think they might. If I'm thinking right, they may end up.
They SMU, which is not Southern Miss.
But Southern Miss is in. But I think Southern Miss is in the other side of their bracket.
Do they have a championship game in the Conference USA?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think they do.
And so I think Southern Miss has got a good squad.
Correct. Yeah, they're not. Southern Miss 9-1, and it looks like they would play them in a championship game.
Oh boy, and they had a scare the other night. Just out of the box, Southern Miss. The team went for 2, whoever it was. And I'm going blank all of a sudden, but. They got real lucky because the kid was wide open and
missed a pass.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this, Houston's schedule. They've got SMU, which is a 6-4 team, and Tulsa, which is 7-3. But Tulsa's also, that game they lose to Tulsa. I mean, Tulsa's undefeated in the Conference USA as well. So. Who knows what?
A lot of passing
Houston
yards in that game.
Absolutely, and in the SMU game, you got June Jones. He's still at SMU.
Yeah.
They sling it around. I guess the big news, and we touched on this last week, was Arkansas. They're moving up to 6. If Arkansas does beat LSU, another huge game. Excited for that. Then we've got a little mess out west. I think that Arkansas still is on the outside looking in, and Alabama.
They might be outside the BCS looking in.
Yeah, correct. With that whole, you can't have 3 teams from one conference go to a BCS game. So there's a chance. I mean, this probably won't happen, but hypothetically, you could have the number 1, 2, and 3 team in the BCS, and let's say it's Arkansas and they don't get into a BCS game
At worst,
number 3.
At worst, number 5, because Oklahoma and Oklahoma State play each other, and one of those will have to lose. They're going to drop heavy because it's later in the season. One of those is going to drop past 5.
Correct.
Because you've got, what, 2 and 4 are they currently, I think?
Yeah, Oklahoma State's 2 and Oklahoma's 5.
Okay. And then
Oregon's 4.
So
projected.
One of those 2 are going to drop out. So now, theoretically, if LSU loses to Arkansas, you're having 1, 2, and 5 or 1, 3, and 5, depending on what Alabama, whoever Oklahoma State or Oklahoma loses. 3 of the top 5 teams in the country in the BCS, and only 2 of them make it to the championship or the BCS bowl games. That's hopefully going to change here in the future with some of the realignment talk.
So what we're saying is, with 2 games left, it's clear as mud, right?
It's clear as mud. So
I'll tell you another thing that kind of did shake itself out a little bit, and we'll talk about this game more. But Georgia took care of Auburn, did what they need to do. They've got Kentucky left, and as long as they take care of business there, they're going to be the representative from the East. That's correct, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it looks like Georgia, which is another tough game, and something else I think we should talk about. Let's say LSU does take care of Arkansas, and we've got LSU Georgia game where if LSU wins, they're going to the national championship. It's very likely that Alabama, if Oklahoma State loses, could be sitting at number 2 and get a free ride right into that championship game.
That's the interesting thing, because I think LSU will have a tough time against Georgia if that falls the way we think it's going to fall. But I think they take care of them. But yeah, Alabama could possibly be sitting there kind of with the free ride straight into the championship of Oklahoma State.
Saban's sitting there happy that they've lost now.
Yeah.
And how much fun would that be if you're LSU, if you actually go undefeated and Alabama sneaks into number 2 and you got to play that extra game and then you got to play them again. It's going to be pretty interesting.
And if they lose that, then you got LSU going, we've only got 1 loss. Alabama's got 1 loss. Why should they go to the championship over us when we beat them? So it's a mess. I mean, hopefully, in a perfect world for us SEC fans, you'd get LSU taking care of business, Alabama rematch in that national championship, and get that would be unbelievable. An SEC all one conference to decide the national champions.
Well, and I mean, realistically, could they slip to number 2 and Alabama go to number 1, and you still would have that rematch if Oklahoma State loses?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're losing the championship game, you're generally not going to fall very far.
That's the one thing that we always talk about with football and not having a playoff is if you're going to lose a game, it's better to lose early than late, and it's hard to think a team could. Well, the only situation I can remember is Florida and Florida State back in 1996. Florida gets beat by Florida State the last game of the season, like they always play, and they were clearly the best 2 teams in the country, and they actually had a rematch in. I guess that would be. Well, Florida ended up winning the SEC championship game that year,
right?
And then had a rematch in. I guess it would have been the Sugar Bowl,
right?
And Florida beat Florida State for the national championship. Yeah. So. That was with 2 games left. I'm sure there could have been plenty of other situations where that happened, but I don't remember them. But it once again, the tough thing is there's too much time left to be. There's too many games left.
But next week's slate of games, and we'll get into that. It's pretty easy for most of at least in the SEC.
Yeah, it's cake next week. There are a couple games with some significance bowl-wise, but nothing as far as conference. As far as the conference goes, besides the Kentucky-Georgia game, as long as Georgia takes care of business, which they should at home against a team that just got beat by 30 by Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's get into the games that happened yesterday, and we'll start off by a team that had a first in getting to 6 wins in the SEC, winning out in the East. But still is very likely the second best team in the East when it's all said and done, and that's going to be Florida playing South Carolina. And South Carolina had to win that game, and they needed some help from Georgia losing. And realistically, this week's game was Georgia's best shot at losing, and the way they played, that wasn't going to happen. But we'll talk about the Florida-South Carolina game.
Yeah, that was a good game. I watched quite a bit of that. I think the tough thing with Florida, we kept on saying, and I predicted that Florida would win this game outright. I wasn't impressed again with South Carolina's offense. We know where their defense what their defense is. The problem I think with Florida is their offensive line is just atrocious, and they give no time for Brantley to pass. You mix a poor offensive line with they've got spread receivers, so they're just running different offenses that they need to run, and the quarterback doesn't have time. It was trouble. I thought they got back into it pretty good at the very end there with Brissett or Driscoll. I don't know. They've got so many guys that have similar last names. Is it Jeff Brissett? Is that his name?
Jacoby.
Jeff Jacoby. They're both
with
similar.
a J.
Both with a J.
Yeah.
Jay Brissett. He had a good touchdown run at the end, and then kept the play alive on the 2-point conversion to make it a field goal game.
Now 17-12.
Okay, to make it it would have been a one field goal game.
And then South
Carolina ran out the clock and did what they were supposed to do.
Well, they got the field goal to put them up.
Oh,
it was 12-14, and then South Carolina, Connor Shaw had a couple big plays there towards the end, got them in field goal position to go up 17-12.
Okay, so that would have tied the game at 14 if he'd have done that. Okay.
Yeah,
and I mean, it was just one of those things where Florida didn't have enough offensive firepower. They've got some wonderful athletes in Demps and Rainey, but their receiving core leaves a little bit of desired, and I just thought that their offensive line was porous. And that's coming from a conversation I had with a Florida fan when we were watching that game, so...
Yeah, it just plays straight into South Carolina's strength, which is their defensive line, because they can just kind of get after you from that standpoint. But the interesting thing, South Carolina in the last 2 years is 6-0 against Georgia, UT, and Florida. And last year they got to the SEC championship with 3 losses. And this year, they're not going to get to the SEC championship in the East. So it's just kind of interesting that you're 6-0 in the last 2 years against what you would consider the powerhouses of the East. So it just kind of shows you where the East is right now when you kind of get from the top to the bottom. You get outside of Georgia and really South Carolina. It's got a little bit to be desired right now from that standpoint. But I'm pretty sure Steve Spurrier is he's sure got to be pulling his hair out because he's having to run the ball and he's having to run a spread. It's the only way that he can move the ball because they just flat can't pass. But if you would have told me at the beginning of the year that Alshon Jeffrey would hardly ever touch the ball the whole season, and you would just be sitting there at 7-2, 8-2.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. But
and I mean, here's the difference. I mean, as a Tennessee fan, I complain about I sit here and whine. I can't believe these injuries. You can't overcome this kind of injuries and do anything. And look what they've done. They got rid of their quarterback, and they lost the best, one of the best players in the SEC in Lattimore. And Connor Shaw stepped in, and I don't think he's not a great passing quarterback, but the kid ran 16 times for 88 yards and a couple touchdowns. I mean, he's doing what he needs to do to win the game, and he's keeping them in it. And I feel like this is a bad year for South Carolina, and it just shows you that you've kind of arrived a little bit more as a contender in that East when it's a down year and you're 8-2.
Yeah, and 6-2 in the conference. We'll go into another game that has no bearing on the East, but we're going to stay in the East, and that's the Kentucky Vanderbilt matchup here at West End. What it did do is get Vanderbilt one step closer to a bowl eligibility with 2 games left. Realistically, though, that's two tough games for them. They've got Tennessee. I know you're shaking your head over there.
I hope it's a tough game for them. I hope they get throttled.
Tennessee's defense still is strong. I mean,
yeah, they only gave up 49 to Arkansas. And
it's Arkansas.
And I'm fairly sure the worst tackling performance in the history of football on that Joe Adams punt return.
We'll get that. Was a terrific to watch, though. Not because it was Tennessee, just in entertaining.
Yeah.
But
it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. So,
well, let's talk about another worst performance, and that was Kentucky. 4-6 on the season now. It's their season's done with. You're even mentioning rumblings of Joker Phillips leaving.
It's great to be SEC football fans, right? Tennessee and Kentucky having Mississippi State. Let's put it in there too, man. Just all underperforming what we should do. I'm not gonna talk negatively about Kentucky on this for a minute. We'll talk about that in a second. Positively about Vanderbilt. A 30-point win over an SEC team. We talked about this is the first time we can remember Vandy being a double-digit favorite in a SEC game. And how about the first time they just blew somebody out? They've had some wins, but this was just a complete performance. James Franklin is one, he's rallying a fan base.
Yeah.
A fan base that I'm still disappointed in.
Yeah.
Once again,
I was about
crowd's
to say
not there.
The rally is nice, but the stadium was empty.
It's just it's sad, and I think it'll get better. But that's what's sad is you get a guy here, and this is what scares me as a SEC fan. He's going to get tired of having the smallest stadium and not being able. I mean, what do they hold 30-something thousand there?
Yeah, it's like 40.
Like 40,000, 38, 40,000.
Something like that.
And they're not filling that up, whereas you got Tennessee, which is in the doldrums of their existence, and they're getting, 90 plus to Neyland. But it was a good game. Jordan Rogers is when Chad was on the podcast, he just said that he's just a gamer, and that guy's playing well. I mean, he's really leading them, doing what he needs to do. And then you get this Jordan Matthews kid and Chris Boyd, the two wide receivers. They're playing, and then Zach Stacy is doing really well at running back. Kentucky was outmatched. Maxwell Smith taking his lumps as the quarterback. He went pretty much the whole way or he did go the whole way for Kentucky.
Yeah, he did.
And it was just a drubbing.
Yeah, I'd like to rewind the podcast from last week and about what I said about this game, because double-digit favorites, and I said Vanderbilt was going to come in there and actually I felt like I just felt for some reason that they were going to kind of cruise in this game, and they did, because they got a defense that they got a lot of experience on that defense. So I mean, they just I think they were just too much for Kentucky, and it is. I'm glad you actually brought that up about the stands, because James Franklin has lived up to his end of the bargain that the fans need to start supporting at a much greater number. Because I mean, not only is you seat 41,000, but if you looked in those stands, Kentucky's easily got 8,000 to 10,000 sitting in blue. And that's just you just got to be better than that. I think from that standpoint, he's got you at 5 wins with 2 to go, and what I actually think are 2 possible winnable games. I mean, they're going to be tough games, but they've got a shot in them. So,
well, I think it's deeper than that. I sent out a tweet during the Tennessee game, and this is a slap at Vanderbilt fans, but I'm not meaning it to be. And I'm just saying I can't imagine being a Vanderbilt fan. I mean, Tennessee has gone through about 3 years of really bad football, and they're losing games. I remember growing up, if Tennessee lost 2 games in a year, that was the worst thing that's ever happened. I couldn't believe that Tennessee lost 2 games. I mean, I can understand getting beat by Florida, but other than that, we won every other game, or at worst case, you lost 3 games in a season. And now we're sitting here talking about, is Tennessee going to make a bowl game? And I really was sick at my stomach watching that game last night as a Tennessee fan, and I think to myself, how can you be? I mean, how would life be as a Vanderbilt fan who's had this for 30 years plus of just not winning games? And I think maybe that's the problem, is you've got all these people that they're Vanderbilt fans and they watch the games and they enjoy watching them, but they're just not they're not bought in. They're not emotionally attached to Vanderbilt, because they can't be. Otherwise, you would have shot yourself after the game or something. So
when you don't have a history of winning, I mean, Mississippi State's the same way. I mean, you can you could put on a pretty short list of the successful seasons they've actually had over the last 80 years. So what Mullen's doing is what James Franklin has to do. You have to come in there and show and kind of educate the fans on how to actually build a championship program. The problem is you're in the SEC and everybody is thirsty for winning, and when you put together an 8-4 team like we did last year and go win a Gator Bowl, all of a sudden expectations get heightened.
Well, Vanderbilt also has to worry about, or they don't worry about it, but they have issues where a lot of their individuals that go to their school do not stay in Nashville or the surrounding area. I mean, they get a ton of people from the international world that come to their school, spend their 4 years, get their diplomas, and then they're gone. They're never seen back on Vanderbilt's campus. You also have a contingent here in Nashville. If you ask the people where they're from Knoxville, they're from Lexington, they're from Alabama or Birmingham, Athens. If you look, the majority of people in Nashville that are not from here have a team, have allegiances to other SEC football programs. It's not like they're fans of other football programs. It's other SEC football programs. So it's really hard for them to become a convert. If you ask most of them, they like to see Vanderbilt do well, but they're not going to go root for them when it's not their team.
Right, and you're also in Nashville, so it's a little bit of a larger city than most of your places where, everything's going to die by what's going on in Knoxville or what's going on in, Athens or what's going on this and there. But, they should do a better job of actually marketing to that Nashville fan base. I mean, there's enough people out there that want to see them do well that, are got kids that are growing up here that want to obviously follow some type of Vanderbilt or some type of team that's local with the local entertainment.
Problem is their dad went to some other school in the SEC, and
exactly.
What the flag that's flying outside their house every Saturday isn't a Vanderbilt flag, and that's a big thing that Vanderbilt has to overcome, and I don't know if they truly can.
Yeah.
I mean, because Nashville notoriously, or good or bad, I don't know if it's notorious or not, but you just have a lot of people from outside of Nashville that went to different schools, and that's a good thing for Nashville and the economy, because they're able to recruit all these individuals from these different campuses. But you don't have the Vanderbilt contingency here. To talk just a second about Kentucky, I'll say the statistics that are just blaring for me as far as about their weaknesses is their yardage. Their total yardage for the game was less than Vanderbilt's entire first half yardage. I think Vanderbilt had 278 yards in the first half, and Kentucky had 211 for the whole entire ball game. 41 of those yards were gotten in the first half. They did not convert a single third down. Kentucky didn't.
No way. Is that a stat? Right?
That's a stat.
Over 12 on third down. That's unbelievable.
I mean, if you want to know why Kentucky's so bad, look at that. They could, and I've talked about how Kentucky can't continue a drive. They can't give their defense enough time to rest because they can't convert on third down. And there was a lot of situations where it was 3rd and short. I mean, they weren't always at 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. They had some 3rd and 2s quite a bit, but they just couldn't convert. And when you do that, I don't have the stat for time of possession, but it's got to be one-sided, and that right there is one of Kentucky's biggest issues.
Yeah, it was almost 2-1 Vanderbilt, almost 39 minutes to 21 minutes. So,
there you go.
I think that we talked about this before. Joker Phillips on the hot seat. I would say his seat's getting a little warmer. Next year is going to be a big year for him. I think that a coach, especially at a place like Kentucky, if you're getting rid of coaches in 2 years and you're not giving them the time, then I think that you're just failing to give them an opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know how much better it looks next year, but you give them another year like this where they're getting drubbed, and I don't care who you are, you're not gonna last much longer. So I think he's on the hot seat. He's kind of on the watch list for next year. Definitely give him next year, and not saying you got to make a bowl game, not saying you got to. You've got to make games. No, you've got to make a bowl game.
No, maybe so. I don't know. I'm just saying. That's 6 wins. I mean, and you look at Kentucky's schedule. Kentucky has always scheduled 4 winnable non-conference games. Yeah. Now, next year they're still going to be able to with the change. So you're going to have four of those. One of those is Louisville, and they've improved over the last couple of years. But that game's always on the schedule. So they schedule 4 games that they should win. That means they only need to win 2 in the SEC, and that has to happen. Hopefully, they're going to get maybe Missouri and Texas A&M and have a shot. But Texas A&M's nothing to laugh at.
Either is Missouri. I would think that they're both 2 touchdown favorites over.
They're better than Alabama or LSU to be on the schedule, though.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Well, they'll definitely get Missouri, and yeah, I don't like it for them. I mean, I'm not loving it for them.
Yeah. I think the thing to watch is to see what Charlie Strong does at Louisville. See what he does in recruiting and what Joker does in recruiting. They were kind of pretty passionate that T. Martin, was the reason kind of behind their whole recruiting class last year, so they were able to keep him on. Mm-hmm. So they've got to recruit well. They got to get some playmakers in there, and if he doesn't have a good recruiting class, and Charlie Strong gets on that recruiting. Because Louisville's kind of made a little bit of a push, had a nice little upset a couple of weeks ago, and at West Virginia, I believe, or something like that. But that's the kind of thing that makes Kentucky people's heartbeat is kind of what Louisville's doing as well.
Yeah, how well is Louisville doing compared to Kentucky?
Right.
Yeah. Well, we'll go on and look at the next game, and I'm going to go to the Georgia-Auburn game. What that did was that cemented Georgia in the driver's seat in the East. They talk about overcoming adversity at the beginning of the season with 2 losses right off in a row to come back and, was that 7 straight?
Mm-hmm.
8 straight wins?
Yeah, that's 8 straight wins.
Yeah, 8-2.
So, good job. Congratulations, Mark Richt.
Yeah. I mean it's nice. You obviously, boy, Auburn struggled on the road this year. God, I wish we would have played them on the road, for crying out loud. But they just haven't done well, and I was kind of shocked by this. I thought with I think they had a bye week. I thought coming off of that they were going to be able to clean up a little bit on the offensive side of the ball, and Georgia's got a roughly top 10, top 15 defense, and but man, they just kind of took them out, and that. What's the wide receiver for Georgia? Malcolm Mitchell. They got back. Yeah, I mean he's a stud. And they got them kind of rolling, and that thing just kind of grew and snowballed on them real quick. I mean, it just got ugly fast.
Yeah, a couple of things from this game. We've talked about Auburn's struggles. I think they've done a great job with having to rebuild an entire team, and they've done a good job of getting a good record out of this. They've played some close games and snuck them out.
That's a smoke and mirrors 6 wins right there.
Absolutely, and I think that Georgia. I think this is a case where I know for me, I wrote them off way too quickly. After those 2 losses, I mean, we have to remember who they were too. I mean, you're going on the road to South Carolina. That was at South Carolina, right?
Correct.
They lost at South Carolina, and then the Boise State game. And that's 2 tough games. I mean, you're talking about a South Carolina team that had Lattimore and still had Garcia with his head on straight. So, that's
actually South Carolina was at Athens.
Was that in Athens?
Yeah.
Regardless, I mean that's 2. Kind of wrote them off. You don't think about them, but 8 straight wins, and this is a team that you do not want to play right now. Aaron Murray is slinging the ball. Hitting a bunch of different receivers and looking like an SEC quarterback should look. And then I'll tell you the other guy that I'm really super impressed with is Isaiah Kroll. That guy is a runner. He looked good running the ball in that second half. He made a mistake last week and paid for it against New Mexico State Southwest Tech.
Ironic that those guys actually failed the test the week of Florida, and they announced it the following week. But we won't go down that road. Quick.
Yeah, I think we've already talked about it a little bit, but yeah, I mean that's just it is what it is, and then. But, I mean, Kroll in that second half, I mean, he just was finishing runs. He was getting 8-9 yards a carry up the middle, and I thought he just looked like a good back, and he's only a freshman. I mean, he's gonna be a good one for the next 2 or 3 years, and I think Georgia's they're for real. I mean, I put them right in that upper echelon. I don't put them with LSU and Alabama, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think they could beat either one of those teams.
I think they truly are the 3rd best team in the SEC.
Arkansas is pretty good.
I forgot about Arkansas. And my love for Arkansas here lately. How could I do that? Oh, well. One thing I'll talk about, I mentioned how bad Kentucky's third down efficiency was. Well, Georgia was 12 for 15. That continues a lot of drives. Oh, yeah. And Murray, his accuracy. We've talked in earlier podcasts about how his accuracy wasn't where we thought it was supposed to be, but he's found that he was 14 of 18, 224 and 4 touchdowns. Those 4 touchdowns put him ahead of Matthew Stafford now, right? And that for in Georgia's rankings as far as most touchdowns in a single season for a Georgia quarterback.
Yeah, I mean Murray's had a great year, and I think that they're going into, they should beat Kentucky, and they're going to the SEC championship game with a head of steam and ready to take somebody out.
And he's going to add to that total next week. So I mean that's going to, even though he beat Stafford's totals, he still has that one more game against Kentucky, and you could see another 4 touchdown performance from him coming up. So it doesn't bode well for the Wildcats. I'll just say that, and we're going to go on to the next game. How's that?
Works for me.
Let's talk about my alma mater, and that's the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers, headed down to LSU to play the Tigers. And really, I was surprised at how well LSU, or how much they let Western Kentucky run on them. I mean, they were having some big runs. Their kickoff returner for Western Kentucky was just eating up yards, giving Western some really decent field possession. The score only shows 9, but at the halftime it was 7-7 against LSU. So I mean that's for all intents and purposes, Western Kentucky fans are going to take that as a victory.
Yeah. I didn't see the game, and it was 14-7. LSU scored late.
That's right. That's right.
In the second, but I think it was one of those games where LSU knew what they had to do, just kind of slow it down, win the game, and I think Western Kentucky is a better team than they have been, improved quite a bit. LSU, not much to see here. I mean, they started off slow, and then they did what they needed to do to win the game by 35 points.
Yeah, and I think I don't know if LSU never struggled.
33 points.
They never struggled, but I think Western surprised them. It was somewhat of a letdown game for LSU, and thankfully they had that on their schedule. I think if they were playing a real opponent, that this could have been a little different story, because LSU did look a little flat at times, allowing some big kickoff returns. When they got close to the goal line, they really tightened up a couple times that Western was down there, went for it on 4th down, and were stopped. So LSU did what they were supposed to do there, and I think who do they have next week? They've got a
tough one. They got Ole Miss.
They got another tough one on their schedule there.
They can't help this one. They have to play them.
Yeah, and that's really all that we're going to. It doesn't deserve a lot of conversation, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the Hilltoppers on a great performance. They have 2 more chances at bowl eligibility as well. Yeah. So I mean, rattled off 5 straight before coming down to Baton Rouge. Let's talk about the La Tech game.
Blair, you got this one. I didn't.
I didn't watch this one, obviously being at the Mississippi State game. But
you called it.
Yeah,
you called it last week.
I knew it was going to be a tough game. La Tech had kind of been on a roll here lately, but I sat there and watched them take Mississippi State in overtime in Starkville. So I knew Ole Miss was going to have a little bit of a problem. They've got Lennon Creer, who was the old UT volunteer that is running back, and I know he'd been running very well, but that little Isham, I think is Isham, I can't ever remember his last name, the little 18-year-old quarterback now. He was 17 when he started the year, but I'm pretty sure he kind of just slung it around the yard. But they've, Louisiana Tech, I mean, they're playing well right now, and
Derek Dooley's recruits.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where they went into homecoming and made it pretty miserable for Ole Miss, and I think it ended up being 27-7, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this: I know that Houston Nutt's already resigned, but do you think he's in danger of being fired now too? Just we don't accept your resignation; we want to fire you after this one.
I think they're just going to let him ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
The quarterback that I'm showing is Cameron.
Yeah, I don't think
that is from. I guess they.
Yeah, he ran the ball once for 3 yards, but
wow.
C. Cameron, and I don't know who that is. I can give you an idea, but
Kurt
Cameron.
It's Kurt Cameron.
Kurt Cameron.
I believe that's him.
Colby Cameron is what ESPN.
Candace Cameron, DJ from Full House.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, La Tech almost beat us with the other kid that was 17 years old, so I didn't know that kid was not even playing. So wow, shows you what I know.
There we go. But in a pitiful performance from Ole Miss. You would expect a little bit better, but we kind of mentioned that they might have just packed it all in, and Houston might have as well with the game. And sorry for you guys down there in Oxford. It's going to be a long season for your remaining couple games. I don't even know if basketball is going to be that much better to look forward to down there. At Kentucky, we at least have that to look forward to.
Don't write them off yet.
Don't write them off?
Yeah, we can't write them off yet.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Starkville. I think you went down there. Tell us your thoughts about the Alabama-Mississippi State game.
Well, it was a good day leading up to it, but State had their chances. I think like LSU, Alabama came into it a little bit conservative, a little bit flat, but Mississippi State was definitely there to play on the defensive side of the ball. It kept them in the game, but State just made too many errors. I mean, they had to play mistake-free football and catch Alabama on a bad day, and I think they caught them on a bad day. but they just made too many mistakes. They missed a couple of field goals early that would have kept it, somewhere around that 7-3 going into half. Opportunity on an interception to get in the end zone, didn't do that. So once Alabama got up 10-0, and we kind of got back into it at 17-7, and then they kind of tacked on an extra one there at the end. But I thought we did a really good job from a defensive standpoint. We were in the ball game. We kept Trent Richardson bottled up until the last, I think last 4 minutes. He had like 42 yards in the last 4 minutes, just on kind of handing it off. But I mean, he carried the ball 32 times. Lacey got a couple of nice gashes. It's just one of those deals where you had to play a real clean game, and they didn't do it.
You guys did a great job defensively against Alabama. I mean, there were lots of times that Alabama tried to stay with that run game, and you guys did a great job trying to just keep them from performing the way the game plan that they wanted to do. You did take Alabama out of that game plan, I think, and made them win that game. I think you're right. You had plenty of opportunities. You had some really big missed chances on your side of the ball that you look back and you just hate that. But that's the only way that a team like Mississippi State can beat Alabama is to have those things go their way. And I'm guessing you weren't watching that. You were busy watching the next game we're going to talk about, correct?
No, I mean, yeah, you're correct. I mean, I saw a little bit of it, but it looked like Alabama was flat. But I just don't think they're the Mississippi State's going to. They had to play their best game and they didn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the game you were watching, and they were both going on at the same time here, and that was Arkansas hosting the Tennessee Volunteers.
Not a fun one. I don't like playing in Arkansas. Tennessee tends to get drummed pretty bad in Fayetteville. It was a tough game. I mean, Tennessee got the ball to start with. Just kind of their luck. I mean, they drive it down there, have a decent drive, 4th and 13, line up for a field goal, and run that kind of weird play where the holder snaps it over his head snaps it back to Pilardi, the kicker. And it's just one of those things where most of the time when a play like that happens, it's usually like wide open. And Tennessee, instead, we've got our kicker running, for his life, being chased, and the guy that's supposed to be open is guarded. I mean, he throws it and it's incomplete, and we turn the ball over. It's one of those things where, Tennessee doesn't run a lot of trick plays, but when they do, it's just kind of one of those seasons where that stuff's just not open. I mean, generally they're going to be just wide open. You're going to score. You're happy. But that kind of started the game off. Arkansas went down, 3rd and goal. Tennessee looks to stop them, gets a good pressure on Wilson, and he throws a touchdown pass. And then Tennessee, on the next possession, punts to Joe Adams and decides to look like just clown shoes out there trying to tackle him. It was, Shane, you as SEC Sports Roundtable tweeted, what an amazing punt return by Adams. And I'm just, maybe it's immature of me not to give him his credit, but I thought it was a horrible mistake by Adams. He ran backwards, and Tennessee missed about 6 tackles in a row. I mean, I have no bones. I'm a overweight 31-year-old who played 1 year of 8th grade football and then played a little intramural flag football and played a little co-ed in the last few years. And I'm telling you, I think if you put me in that position where the Tennessee guys were, I'm telling you, I think I make that tackle. I mean, the guy stood still. I've got a wall of my fellow teammates around. I don't go for the big hit. I try to hit low and wrap up and hold on and let somebody finish the tackle. Instead, we go for his head and we're trying to push him down or push him out of bounds, and he tight ropes the sideline and goes for a 70-yard punt return. And then the rest is history. I mean, Tennessee did score to make it a 14-point game. Rajon Neal on an end around gets in the end zone, but then you've got a 75-yard run where the safety takes the wrong angle and the running back goes untouched for a touchdown. Then in the second half, you have a chance to make it a closer game going into halftime, and your quarterback throws an interception off his back foot the closing seconds of the first half. Second half, you just can't get anything going, and then you lose 49-7. I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm not ready to just, I tweeted I'm done with the team and the coaches this year. It's just one of those years where everything bad that can happen, it seems like it has. and you're not really being able to catch a break. And Arkansas is a good team. Tyler Wilson can throw the ball. This is the best offense that Tennessee has faced, bar none. No questions about it. Arkansas is an elite offensive team. I didn't think their defense was as good as to only hold them to 7 points. But once again, Tennessee's got a true freshman that's never that's just untested and was thrown against high school players last year, and they're taking their lumps. I mean, I hope that there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but right now I think there's just a pot of crap or something. I mean, it's just, there's nothing. It's just not. Nothing seems to be going Tennessee's way.
Yeah, and then you got the whole deal with Brewer out, and you have to move Wagner over, and you've got a secondary that's just kind of depleted, and that's just a recipe for disaster against Arkansas.
Well, I hate to sit there and talk about a guy that got kicked off the team before the season started, but I mean, it's tough when you lose an all-SEC performer at safety, and then you have to take your only cornerback and move him to safety, where you go from being like a second-team all-SEC cornerback to you're not even that good of a safety, but you have to put him there because there's nobody else that can play that position.
Yeah. The funny thing is that whenever the Jansen Jackson got kicked off, it was. Well, that was the one area, if Tennessee had an area where you could probably absorb a hit, it was the secondary. And the secondary is the one that's really underperformed. The defensive lines played better than expected. And then you've got those freshmen in the linebacker core that have played pretty decent being thrown in there. But the secondary is just it's let them down all year.
Well, two things. One, Tennessee has no pass rush. That's been, your secondary is going to be left on an island out there when you don't have any kind of pass rush. Two, Brent Brewer, first of all, he tore his ACL and is out for the season. That being said, he wasn't playing. I mean, he didn't improve the way people thought he would. The end of last year, that guy was laying wood. I mean, he was playing, and I was excited about his prospects. I mean, there were people on the Tennessee message boards going, I wonder if he'll stay for his senior season. And it's just one of those things where him not being as good, then you got to move Wagner. You have one guy, and I'm telling you, I think Prentice Wagner is a very solid SEC cornerback. But you move him to safety, and now you're having to decide between Marcus Teague, they finally have quit playing him. I mean, he's got burnt more than anybody in the nation, I believe. And then you've got all freshmen. They're young, and you're exactly right. They just hadn't played the way they should have to win games. And without the pass rush, and then Tennessee's best linebacker, I thought he was going to be out for 1 or 2 games, and he hadn't played the entire season, Herman Lather. So a bad year for injuries, and you've hoped somebody would step up, and nobody stepped up.
Exactly.
It's all woe is me over here, but realistically, you've got 2 games left that if you win those, you've got a bowl game, right?
Yeah, and I'm still optimistic about those games. I think that we get Vanderbilt in Neyland Stadium, which is a plus. Although I'm telling you, I think Tennessee playing at Dudley Field in Vanderbilt is a home game too, even on a down year like this.
Well, playing Kentucky and Commonwealth is a home game as well.
No, I mean Kentucky still shows up. Kentucky fans, they're different. I'm telling you, I don't care what kind of season they still have fans and they cheer and they're rowdy.
You've won there the last 14 years, so
yes, I'm not saying it's a home game. I'm just saying
might as well be. Because it's still a win.
You watch this is a slap at Vanderbilt. Even the kind of season they're having right now, if Tennessee played in at Vanderbilt Stadium,
it'd be orange.
It would be 85% orange.
It would.
It's ridiculous. I've never seen one team take over something like that.
Well, you see when Tennessee plays here in Nashville, you see many Tennessee fans buying season tickets to Vanderbilt Commodores just so they can have that Tennessee game.
Sure.
And that doesn't bode well for Vanderbilt attendance. The remaining,
they just don't show up for the other games.
Yeah, maybe.
That's why. Where are all the fans? They're other opposing teams' fans just waiting for their one home game.
And as inexpensive as the season tickets are, there's a number of individuals out here in the Nashville area that do just that.
Sure.
To ensure that they can watch the game they want to watch. Well, that kind of wraps up, I think, the week that was. We're going to quickly go over the week that is. It's a cupcake week for a lot of teams, and Drew, just quickly go through them. There's just 1 or 2 that we're going to hit on. If you want to see our picks, just be on the lookout later in the week. We're going to get those posted. We'll get those posted earlier than normal. But right now, there's no lines out there, so we would just be making best guesses. And when you're playing people like the Citadel and Furman and Samford, it's hard to say what kind of line that would be out there. So we don't want to just be ridiculous with our guesses. So we want to try to give you guys some good insight on that, because if you look at the overall standings, there's some good numbers out there overall.
Yeah, just to kind of go over them, I'll just at least want to mention them. We've got the Citadel playing at USC, and anytime you've got a school with the in front of it, you know that's probably going to be an easier one. So you've got the Citadel playing
the Ohio State.
The Ohio State. I think they just added that. I mean, I don't think they're officially that. You've got Samford playing at Auburn. That's not much. And we're sitting there saying this and knowing there's probably going to be an upset, and we're not even going to discuss it. But I wouldn't have seen it coming. You got Bobby Johnson's old stopping grounds. Furman playing at Florida. Georgia Southern, which has only been a football school for a couple years now, playing at Alabama. So you got those kind of non-conference games. Nobody's got a tough one. And then the other games that we can touch on real quick, we've got LSU at Ole Miss. I don't know what you can say about that game. Blair kind of mentioned it still could be a trap game before Arkansas. Or it might have been you, Shane. I can't remember who said it, but I don't know. Do y'all have any comments on that? I mean,
it's going to be a trouncing.
Yeah,
I just don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, if they put up 49 against Western, I could see something similar.
And I'm not so sure that if Western played Ole Miss, that wouldn't be a
better game. Yeah, I bet the spread would be a lot closer, especially after Louisiana Lafayette, did what they did at Ole Miss. So I don't see that one's much of a game as well.
Yeah, the other one we've got Kentucky at Georgia, which that's a kind of another one. I mean, you've got Georgia playing at home, playing lights out right now, and you got Kentucky that's down. There's big implications on that game because if Georgia wins that game, they are going to represent the East in the SEC championship game. So I mean, just quickly in that one, I think that Georgia takes care of business. I just don't see any way not that they don't.
I think Georgia, their defense is too good, and I think just a major letdown by Georgia and turning the ball over 4 times, could make this thing turn around real quick. But I think Georgia's got too much to play for.
One thing I'll say, and it's nothing about the games, it's just about our overall records. This week is somewhat of a trap week for us making our picks because you're going to have some crazy lines out there. I think it's going to be like some of those early season games, and you don't know how those other teams are going to perform. But right now we're looking at some overall records. Brett's still in the lead. He's 50, 25, and 2. We had another push game last week with the Alabama-Mississippi State game. I caught up with him quite a bit this week. I had a great week. I was 5-1-1 at 49, 26, and 2.
That's unbelievable as well. What's Brett's record overall?
50, 25, and 2.
So you're 1 game back now?
I'm 1 game back. He did not have a great week. He was, I think, 4 and 2. Then Blair's coming in 3rd place there right now at, if I can get my computer to cooperate, 47, 28, and 2. So I mean, some really, really strong records there from us. There's a 45, 31, and 2 brought in by Chad Caldwell.
Guys, I'm going to go ahead and tell you this. Y'all need to, at the beginning of next year, open up a online gambling account and do only bets on the SEC. I mean, I don't think y'all realize how much money y'all would have made if y'all just lay 100 on every game. I mean that's easy money, guys.
And I've got Mark's at 42, 33, and 2 as well. So, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us that are well above 500 in our picks so far. And honestly, I'm scared this week to make picks. I just want to go for an offer and not make any picks. But that's not fair.
We'll be doing picks, guys. This is a chance for me to come back from my 20 games I'm behind.
Yeah, you're still hovering right there at 500, 37, 38, and 2.
I'm for the real man, the guy that just goes, even Steven.
Don't lose a lot that way, though, right? I mean,
can't win much either. Right?
Well, I'd rather in some situations be that breaking even than having to pay. So.
All right, we got a couple more games that have some significance. I'll just kind of start with this one. Mississippi State at Arkansas. It's another one that I could kind of wax over this one as well, except for I think Mississippi State's on a different level. I think they could come in and pose a little bit of a threat. Arkansas is rolling right now, and you would think that Petrino. God, doesn't feel like that's his correct name. I feel like Petrino's a good enough coach to where he's going to get his guys ready to play.
The best news for Arkansas is it's in Fayetteville, right? And that's
Little Rock.
Yeah, it's Little Rock. So it's considered a home game, even though it's not at their home stadium. But Blair, I mean, do you have any thoughts on this game?
I got lots of thoughts on this game.
You think Mississippi State can come back and compete in this one?
I think they can actually. Well, there's a couple things that play into this. Number one, Mississippi State is absolutely horrible in Arkansas. Little Rock, they have not won since the Arkansas came back in 92. I believe they're 0-13. If I'm not mistaken, in Fayetteville and Little Rock. So not a lot of success there. The reason that I think we got a shot is with this LSU game looming. I think you can kind of maybe get Arkansas a little bit, but Mississippi State's defense, I think, is going to keep this in there. Arkansas is a big play team, and a stat that you should probably know about this Mississippi State defense is that they actually lead the nation in the least amount of plays, 30-plus yards on defense. They've allowed 5 plays of 30 yards or more the whole year. So basically, I mean, if you watch the Alabama game the other night, they just don't give up big chunks of yardage, and we got a couple of good corners. We got a pretty good secondary. We got Jonathan Banks as a corner that is playing as good as anybody. He's 6'2", he's long, he makes it a little bit difficult. So I think they're going to be prepared. I mean, when I look at Mississippi State, I look at you play LSU as tight as anybody's played them all year except Alabama. You play Alabama pretty tough the other night, and your other losses are South Carolina. When you had that game. I mean, it's a 14-10, 14-12 game, I think, when it's over. And, you got Georgia in Athens, and you gave them a run for their money, and they kind of pulled away late. So, the only inexplicable, issue that I have is that we lost at Auburn, and that was the kind of the turning point of the season. But that's 4 teams in the top 13 that you got losses for. So it's just the West that's difficult. Now you're going to play what we're thinking is going to be the 6th team in the BCS. So I think they got a shot. I think they'll keep it within whatever the spread is. I think it'll be a closer game than most. It's the first time State's going to be on CBS since 2005. So it's been a long drought.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's been a long drought. So I'm interested to see. But we haven't had a lot of success in Little Rock, though.
Anything else on the games?
I got nothing else. Well, we got one more game to talk about, and it's not. It has nothing to do with the East standings or anything, but it is bowl implications. We've got Vanderbilt going to Tennessee, and I didn't just save this for last because I think it's just a huge game or anything. But that being said, I think it's big for both programs because you've got.
I know we don't have a line on this yet, but do you see Vandy going in as a favorite?
No, I don't think they'll make Vanderbilt a favorite. I think it'll be a 3.5, somewhere around there, Tennessee favored kind of game. I think that, once again, the goal of the odds makers is not to predict what they think the score of the game is going to be. They want to put a spread out there where you're going to have equal action on both teams.
Right.
I think that if you make Vanderbilt a favorite, you're going to just get loaded bets on Tennessee, and I don't think that's what they're looking for. Now, every once in a while, if they feel strongly enough about one, they'll throw it out there, and that's how the casinos make money. It's
their trap game.
Yeah, it's kind of a trap game for the public. I still think you'll get a lot of money on Tennessee at a field goal with Tennessee's success over them in the past years. And this might be a game where you don't have a line for a while because they might want to see what Tyler Brady's going to do. And being in Knoxville, I think there is still a home field advantage, and they'll get some love from the odds makers on that. That being said, come out and Vanderbilt's a 6-point favorite, and what do I know? So, it's a big game. Here's my thought: is I think part of the reason that the Tennessee fans are so down right now is what James Franklin is doing at Vanderbilt. It's not that Vanderbilt's got a much better record. It's just that they're being competitive in games, and there's all this hype around the other state school that's always looked on as they're a joke. They don't have anything to do with us. They've beat Tennessee for a couple in-state recruits. Once again, they're not 5-star recruits that are just world beaters out there, but they're the top recruits in the state of Tennessee, and they're picking to go to Vanderbilt over Tennessee, and that's never been the case. Tennessee's never had to worry about competing with Vanderbilt. And I think that
UT's always won their state when it comes to recruiting.
Sure, and and I'm not saying that they're not going to win it, this year, but when guys start picking a different school, it gets the fans going. We're sitting here with this guy that's not winning, and we're not being competitive. And then you got a school like Vanderbilt that doesn't have facilities, and their cupboard is much more bare than what Tennessee's is, and they're able to compete in games and look good, and everybody's pumped up about their season. And I think it's just a negative for Tennessee overall, being compared to what Vanderbilt's got going on right now. There's an easy way to shut them up, and that's to go in to Knoxville and do what you're supposed to do and beat them by 2 touchdowns. So
the thing that I look at in this game is Tennessee is again back in the situation where they've got to win the last 2 games to get to a bowl game. Last year was the last 4, and when you start putting that emphasis on a second year, that's a lot of pressure, and I'm wondering how Tennessee's going to react to that. I think if they get Bray back, that helps a lot. But Vanderbilt could throw the ball, and they can run the ball right now. And I think Franklin, it's an opportunity not only for Vanderbilt to get to 6 wins, but it's an opportunity to squash Tennessee's bowl chances. So I think they're going to go in there with a purpose, and I think this is going to be a very, very tight ball game. But I think if Worley is there, I think Vanderbilt has a slight edge in winning this game in Knoxville. But if Bray's there, I think he could be a difference maker.
How do you see this playing out 2 weeks from now if Vanderbilt comes in and beats Tennessee, that Tennessee-Kentucky game? Do you see either team having anything to play for?
I don't know that they're going to have much to play for. I still think that Tennessee's going to throttle Kentucky. I think they'll come in and they'll play hard. Tennessee still has talented players. They've got some talent there. It's young, but I don't see them just packing it in. I think they're going to go in and do their best.
A guy can hope, so.
Who knows, man? You might end this 400-game streak or whatever it is right now.
Yeah. I'm not going to – don't ask me to hold my breath for that. Well, that's the last game for the week that's going to look at, all right, Drew?
That's it.
That's it. So we went over those pretty quick, but we did that for a reason. We also have something else that started this week, and that was real college basketball. And everybody got a chance to play this week. Mississippi State had the luxury of playing 3 games this week. They must have some tournaments coming up that's going to require some spacing out there, because 3 games your first week is a bang, bang, bang schedule for your first week of actual basketball in the SEC. No SEC games were played, whereas SEC matchups, but you had 3 games and you actually came away with the loss out of those, did you not?
Yes. Typical Stansbury losing to a mid-major team first part of the early part of the schedule. Pretty frustrating.
Now Dan Patrick has to be happy about the win.
Yeah, it's a bunch of garbage. I'm pretty. Go ahead.
Dan Patrick's a Dayton Flyer,
not an Akron Zip.
No, he's not Akron.
But
I'm sure he's excited.
It's still an Ohio team, right?
Yeah,
that's right. But they. Yeah, it's pretty frustrating as a State fan. They took care of South Alabama on Saturday pretty easily, and they're still dealing with
took care of a Kentucky team as well this week, right?
I believe so.
Eastern.
Yeah, they did. Those Eastern was the first game. That's right. That was closer than what people thought. It was still a 10-point ball game, I think. Akron. And granted, Akron went to the NCAA tournament last year, and they're probably going to be an NCAA tournament team this year. And they got a pretty good little squad. But Mississippi State, when we talked in our pregame, they have the ability to kind of get in that elite status of the SEC this year. But there was several things that showed up in that Akron game that don't make me think that this is going to be anything different from what's happened in the past. Renardo Sidney is still out of shape. I don't know how that's possible. And we still don't have ball handlers. I will tell you that Rodney Hood, who is the 6'8" forward or guard that we have that's a true freshman, is the real deal. He's probably the best prospect I think that Mississippi State's ever had on campus. He is dynamite, but he's young. He's kind of got to learn a little bit on the defensive end. But if you take the ball out of D-Boss's hands, which is kind of what happened in Akron. He got in a little bit of foul trouble early. We don't have any ball handlers, and it was just a very sloppy game. LeBron James, high school coach, outcoached Rick Stansberry. It's plain and simple. So, so I'm pretty frustrated. I could go on for 30 minutes. You got the hardest non-conference schedule in the last decade because we've had pretty poor schedules for the last couple of years, which has kind of come back and bit us when we, turned it on late. But it's a typical slow start for Stansberry, and I'm not very happy about it.
Yeah, and I mean it is college basketball. One loss doesn't kill a season or anything. You don't want them to play the way they did because I watched a little bit of that Akron game and didn't think they played wonderfully. But, I mean, it's still up in the air. I mean, it's one of those things where they can just turn it on come SEC time or later in the non-conference schedule. I'll tell you another one. Here's another team we're talking about this, and this just happened today. Vanderbilt gets upset by Cleveland State.
Oh, did they? After they beat Oregon?
Yeah, they beat Oregon in a kind of a closer game. I think they won by 14, but it was a much closer game than that. And they actually scheduled somebody, and then they had their gimme game against Cleveland State. And this is a senior-led Cleveland State team, and I know they shot lights out and beat Vanderbilt. So anything can happen. I still think they're a good team, but you're not going to go. I mean, when's the last time somebody went undefeated and won the national championship? Was that like Indiana back in the late 70s or sometime around then? I don't know. It's been a long time since somebody went undefeated, or I just don't think you're going to see that. So, one game doesn't a season make. I'll tell you that I want to touch on real quick is Tennessee. Conzo Martin had his opening game, and I thought they played really well against a outmatched. Who'd they play, Blair?
UNC Greensboro.
UNC Greensboro, that's right. UNC Greensboro, not the best team. I think they lost their first 15 games to start the season last year, so not like world beaters or anything. But Tennessee took care of business. I think they won by 25, 30 points, somewhere around there. One thing that I was impressed by is Trey Golden, sophomore point guard, and I don't care who you're playing. When you throw up a stat line of 29 points, 9 assists, and 6 rebounds, and he got pulled out of the game with about 8 minutes left to play. You're talking about a guy that could have legitimately had close to a triple-double if he'd have played, a good amount of minutes. Tennessee's got to replace Scotty Hobson and Tobias Harris and Melvin Goins and Brian Williams, and through one game, I'm happy. I got to find some light at the end of the tunnel for Tennessee, and I thought Trey Golden played good for Tennessee.
I didn't mean to cough in there on that from that standpoint, but I've heard a lot of good things about him. I think that. Conzo even said that he was, give him another year, he's going to be a dominant point guard in the SEC. So
and it's a transformation. All the players say that they're in much better shape under Martin than they were under Pearl, and it's kind of like a reverse thing. I compare Trey Golden. My brother Brett, who's been on the podcast numerous times, said, "Who does he look like?" And I'm telling you, this year he looks kind of like a chiseled Baron Davis. I mean, he's one of those kind of squatty looking. Thick, muscular guys, and last year he looked like chubby Baron Davis, which you get. It's kind of like the opposite. Baron Davis went from being in really good shape to at times you're like, well, what's this guy? This guy looks like just a slob out there. Sorry, Baron, if you're listening. You're a heck of a player, but I mean, I think I'm excited. Anybody can look good when they're just draining threes, and I mean, Tennessee was just lights out hitting the three, and that can happen for anybody. I think they. Shane, do you still have that game pulled up?
Which one?
Tennessee game.
I never had it pulled up. I just
you just knew all those things.
I just saw the total recaps.
Okay. Well, I think they ended up making double-digit 3-pointers, and when you do that, you're gonna beat some teams. So, I thought it was good. Shane, did you catch any of the Kentucky game at all? Or
I caught some of it. UK started off very slow. I mean, they played Marist, a team out of New York, and you were expecting them to control that game the whole time, and they did. It was a little sluggish in the first half, but they really, really came on in the second half. Ended up winning by 50. I think they had 5 players in double digits, and the best player didn't even have double digits, but he was tremendous in the rebounding efforts, and so you got to be happy with Kentucky just coming in and throwing out triple digits their first game, no matter who they play. But we're excited up in Big Blue Nation and have a lot of high expectations. So we'll see what ends up happening when they get into some real games. And they've got a couple of tough matchups coming up in the next couple of weeks. They have scheduled some harder non-conference games as well. So we're excited to see what can really happen when you play some true talent there. So.
I think I know Gilchrist had a pretty good game, and Anthony Davis, he looked good too in the limited time I saw him. But I thought that I'm excited. I mean, they've got those freshmen, and they were doing this without the 3-point basket. I mean, I know Deron Lamb kind of caught fire a little bit in the second half of that game, but in the first half, I mean, it was mostly just kind of going into the paint and scoring, and that's what it takes to win. A lot of times when that 3-pointer's not falling, you can be in trouble, and it would be nice if they can rely on something else. And they got it done. I know scoring 100. I'm excited about this Kentucky team.
And that's kind of Calipari's MO, I mean, it's kind of that drive dish kind of offense. It's all about penetration, and so they force the defense, to kind of tip their hand. So
you use that drive to clear out the three.
Yeah.
You bring them down, and it works. That dribble drive is impressive, especially when it's ran correctly.
Talking about Kentucky, how about them getting the commitment from Poitras?
Yeah.
This past week, that's a big one. I mean, it's a big loss for Vanderbilt because Vanderbilt was right there into that. But it's just Calipari, man. I mean, he's going to get a top 3 class every year that he's at Kentucky.
Now, what's he preseason ranked as far as picks?
He's number 8 or 12 or something in the nation.
Poitras?
Yeah.
I mean, he's like top 10.
Yeah.
I mean, he's supposedly the real deal.
Everybody's saying he's one and done. So. That's all Calipari recruits, I think.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing about him is Calipari they understand that, but not only does he get the kids, but he gets them to play, and he gets them to play hard. That's the one thing you can say about Calipari. You may question how he does it, and I know there's a lot of UK fans that every once in a while you get a little bit of rumblings when he makes comments like, the night of the draft when all 5 of them went, this is the greatest night in UK history. And I know a lot of loyal UK people don't like little comments like that.
Yeah.
But, he gets them to play. And that's one thing you can show is that he's got a track record, that's for sure.
Well, I think that's going to do our little basketball
Yeah, I mean, I'm
intro.
sure people play, but I didn't see any of it. So
yeah, there were lots of games. And like Kentucky, the teams that they played were – teams that they were supposed to beat, and really they did. So,
Mississippi State too, except they forgot to win.
The one of their 3,
yeah.
And apparently Vandy now, their second game has hurt them as well. So that's going to do it for the weekend at the round table. We will throw it around to Drew first. We'll let you kick us off. Any movies, anything open mic for you?
No, I need to see some movies, man. I need some coinage so I can go watch some stuff. I'm excited for the winter break. Generally, I go to a movie day, 2000 whatever, and you do the fun pay for 1, stay for 3 triple feature. You gotta fight, guys. When you're doing the triple feature, there's a few things you gotta accomplish. One, you gotta scout out where you're going. There's a lot of planning involved, and this is where usually people get deterred. Actually, people get deterred from the fact that you're stealing movies, but after that, there's a lot of planning that goes involved. So one, you gotta find a place that's that's showing all the movies you want to go see. 2, you've got to schedule what order the movies you want to see. You can't go with like
showtimes are important.
Yeah, showtimes are important, but it's also beyond that. You don't want to go with a a serious drama and then go with a comedy and then end with or you don't want to go action, comedy, then drama or something like that, because then you're kind of drained. You need the last movie to kind of be something lighthearted to kind of get you all the way through. I kind of like going action, comedy. I don't really like to throw the dramas in there because it's just it's hard to stay pumped for 6 hours of 6, 7, 8 hours of movie watching. The next thing you have to do is you got to scout out your theaters and make sure you need to find a theater that does the wraparound, where a lot of times you got stuff that's on the right, movies on the right and the left, and if they're not connected, you have to do the dreaded walk back through the middle, and you can get caught at that point. So you want to go to a theater that wraps around all the way on the outside, and Cool Springs Galleria here in Nashville, Thoroughbred Theaters. It's a wonderful place to do the triple feature. I recommend it. They got bathrooms all over the place. So if somebody's saying, "Hey, where are you going, buddy?" You just say, "I'm heading to the bathroom." Well, there's a bathroom down here. It's full. Something like that. I mean, it's just easy. You gotta think of these things. And
so you've been stopped more than once.
I've been stopped one time, and that was by a guy that I knew from a long time ago. He was a manager at a theater, and it was like a Memorial Day, and I was working at the bank, and we were out. So try to do the double feature and went and saw a movie, and it was not a connected one where you could go around the back. You had to go through the front. Well, of course, the ticket taker, this was on like a Monday or whatever, so the ticket taker was in the very front, but it was a guy that I knew, so he, otherwise I'd have just walked through like I knew what was going on. But I went with, I was waiting, and I thought he had his back turned, and I started walking and just had my eyes straight on to go in the other entrance, and he kind of looks at me, and I make eye contact, and he's like, sneaking into another movie? And I kind of go with I acted like he asked a completely different question. I think I went with like, yeah, it was pretty good. I thought it was all right. I've seen better. And he's like, and he asked me again, were you going to go see another one? And I said, looked at my face. I don't think I had a watch on. I was like, yeah, I just don't think I got time. Like he was asking me if I wanted to go watch another one. And
are you going to join me?
and thinking back, I mean, here's a guy that's I once again knew him from it's like an acquaintance, and he's running the theater on a Tuesday at 2:30. So he's probably, if I just said, yeah, I'm gonna go see another one, man, I'm glad to know you, I can sneak in here and wink at him or something like that, he'd have probably said, yeah, let me get you some popcorn. I don't think he'd have been mad, but I just totally blew that, and instead I just go with the passive route and try to go to a theater where I'm not going to have to go back through that front. It's dreaded. It was a horrible moment, and I should have done better. But bottom line is I didn't get to go see the movie I wanted to see. So
those that are an hour and a half in now know how to get a double and triple feature, right?
I mean, there's still plenty of things you got to consider, like drinks and food. I mean, one bag of popcorn and a drink's not going to fill you up the entire time. So.
But you get the free refills.
Yeah, but every time you walk, you got to have to refill during the first movie because that's the only one you have a ticket stub for.
You got to show them the stub?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on when you're going. It's just, guys, the first rule is it's always dangerous to go back to the middle where people are. You want to stay in those hallways. Most of the time they're not going to ask you where you're going or ask to see your stub. I've been to a trillion movies, and I've never had somebody ask for my stub in the hallway. Now, every time when I go back out to get popcorn, oftentimes they say, let me see your stub. So... you got to be safe with it, and you want the least noticeable route. So you might want to sneak in your waters or your candy in your pocket and just save that for the later movies.
Hope that the concessions on the ends are open.
Yeah, they never are though. I mean,
know.
I swear
Why are they there?
They've got 60 concession stands in the movie theater, and the only one open is the front one. And those concession workers, they don't do a great job. We're an hour and a half in. I'm gonna give you another good story. I went to a movie with a buddy of mine, Trent, who's done the podcast, and we get popcorn. We're like, he's got one of those unlimited bucket refills, for $2, and it holds 7,000 pounds of popcorn. And we go to the movie and we get the popcorn and start eating it, and it's clearly the bottom of the barrel. Popcorn's been popped for 4 hours. So it's before the movie starts, and I said, man, I'm gonna take this back. I'm gonna get us some fresh popcorn. It's like, all right. So I go in there and I tell the 12-year-old kid running the concession stand, hey, man, this popcorn just ain't cutting it. He's like, well, do you want me to just fill up your, because we had eaten half of it, of course. He's like, do you want me to fill it up or do you want brand new? And I was like, yeah, you can just give me brand new. So he takes the popcorn that we've been eating half of, dumps it back into the bin where where they're going to serve it to somebody else, and refills me with other popcorn. And I'm laughing. It's one of those things where stuff like that, how many times have you gotten other people's eating popcorn? Probably. That's why I think you deserve a double feature or triple feature every once in a while.
Not to mention that popcorn cost what, $18 or something ridiculous?
I mean, generally you're paying $9 for a popcorn. I'm gonna cut this so we can go home and have some dinner. You can find me on Twitter at DrewYoung20 if you want to listen to good how to sneak into movie references or just some funny sports anecdotes. Follow me at DrewYoung20.
Thank you, Blair.
It was a good weekend. Glad to be back and look forward to the next couple of weeks. I think next 3 or so weeks is going to be pretty exciting. Kind of see what happens with this BCS. I'm looking forward to it. So. My Twitter handle is at Blair Smiley, SMYLY. I don't do a lot of tweets. I've never tweeted, actually. So,
do any sneaking into movies, Blair?
So, yeah, I need to work on that.
What's the last movie you snuck into, Blair?
I don't know.
It's been a while?
Yeah. Goonies.
It's a good movie.
All right. Well, my Twitter is at PShaneBailey if you'd like to follow me. My little anecdote is I just got a text while we're doing this, and I'll throw this out to Drew. Apparently, you're playing one of our good friends in a fantasy football today, and he's very happy that you have fallen asleep on your defensive pick because you have the Bears sitting on your bench, and they threw up 44. So
well, I mean,
I can let you know that he's very happy that you did that while we're doing this podcast.
It was conscious, didn't fall asleep. I decided to play Cincinnati against Pittsburgh instead of playing, I didn't want to play the Lions. They're a high-scoring team. When 3 defensive touchdowns happen, not much you can do about it. And I don't know. I actually don't know if I'm winning or losing that one. I pray that I'm winning, but we'll see.
I'm going to guess with that text you're not, because he generally doesn't. That's the second time you've played him in just a couple weeks. But
no, I'm not playing him. I'm playing the female from our sports fantasy football league, which hope to beat her. Bad.
He happened to notice that you have the Bears defense on the bench. So I want to thank everyone for listening in on us and letting us enjoy what we do. We hope you're enjoying what we're doing as well. Find us on iTunes at SEC Sports Roundtable. Do a search in any of the podcasts under SEC Sports. You're going to find us. We're on Stitcher Radio as well as on the Facebook, SEC Sports Roundtable. And Twitter, SECSRT is our Twitter handle. We will try to give you updates periodically through the week, let you know when a podcast is coming out, some information there. So it's a good follow so you can keep up to date with what we've got going on. So with that, I'm going to call this one in the books.